Hi guys, Mrs. Cutler here. I thought I would make a video today to show you about a sewing project that I'm doing. I am trying to make some masks and I made one and I have adjusted my pattern and this is the second version of the mask that I've made. So I wanted to show you what I'm doing. This is the fabric that I'm using. I love it. It's got cute little bees on it. So this is a 100% cotton fabric. And then I'm using this interfacing type fabric. And actually it's used to make bags, reusable bags that you would use like at the grocery store. So I was able to find some of this. It is breathable, needs to be breathable, but yet it's a non-woven. So tiny particles would not be able to pass through. So I simply put that on the wrong side of my fabric, and I have two pieces that look like that. So I've got the bag fabric on the back and then my cute bee fabric on the front. What I'm going to do is sew both of these sides together, right sides to right sides together. And the part that I'm sewing is going to form the piece that goes over your nose. So I've got these two pieces ready. Now, by the way, this machine that I'm using is a really old machine. I'll try to move the camera so you can see it. It's an old Singer machine, and it actually does not even have a reverse function. So I have made everything from airplane covers to wedding dresses with it, but I love it. And it is an industrial machine. So when I turn it on, it makes a pretty loud noise. So be prepared. All right, so I'm going to start out here at the top, and I do a few stitches and then I back stitch just so I secure my thread. Okay, and I back stitched again. Now what I do is trim. I don't know if you can see, but I've got this thread that's hanging off, and I'm simply just going to trim the thread. Okay? So I've trimmed my threads, and now you might be able to see this. It's a very curved section that goes over the nose. And if I open it up, it doesn't really want to sit very nicely. So what I'm going to do, I don't know if you can see inside here, but there are a lot of puckers. And because there's extra fabric on that curve, what I'm going to do is on this curved edge, I am going to take it and make little folds, fold it on itself. And then I'm going to make little clips along here. You see what that looks like? I clipped some of this fabric out, so there's not so much fabric in the curve. So my curve will lay a little bit nicer over the nose. And I'm going to do that just all along this curved section. And you can see where I've clipped out some of that excess fabric. Okay, I'm going to make one more here, and that's what it looks like. Now when I turn it to the right side, the curve is really nice and smooth. And if you look at the inside, where we've trimmed out all that excess fabric, it just helps it lay a little bit more flat, especially on the front you can see. And this is going to go right over the nose. The next thing that I want to do is I have taken a piece of it's basically like tin from one of those reusable baking dishes that you would buy like at the dollar store, or a pie tin like you would get with a frozen pie in it. So I just simply took a piece. It's probably 2.5 inches long by 3/8 of an inch wide, and I am going to stitch that across the top area of the nose on the inside of the mask, and that's going to help me be able to bend it and shape it so it goes over my nose and closes any gaps that would be there. Looks like this is a little bit long, so I'm going to trim it just a little bit shorter. I'm going to take this piece and I will top stitch it into this area right up here inside the nose. I'm going to top stitch right through that metal on my fabric. So that's what I'm going to do right now, so it holds the shape over the nose. And I back stitched a little bit again just to make sure that my stitches don't come out. I'm using white thread on the yellow, and I thought the white thread would be fine. Now you can kind of see that with that metal in there, it will hold the shape a little bit better over the nose. Okay, the next thing that I'm going to do is take my other pieces. You noticed I put a blue tape on these. The reason I did that is because when you put two of these shells together, the one that goes on the inside needs to be a little bit smaller because it's making the curve on the inside. So what I did was trim 1/8 of an inch off the side seam and 1/8 of an inch off this curve seam, so it will fit smoothly inside the rest of my mask. So this is the second part of my mask. It's basically the lining. I'm going to sew this seam together. And again, I backstitch, I lift up and I backstitch. I'm going to lift the camera up so you can see what I'm sewing here. I don't know if you can see that. Okay. And I'm going to reinforce those stitches. And again, I trim off any excess threads that I have. So I've got some excess thread here, and I'm going to trim that off. Again, with this curved edge, I want to take out any excess fabric, so I'm going to simply fold it over and take little V-cuts out all along this curved edge. So all of this excess fabric is not going to be in the way of keeping it to form a nice curve. So you can see that I clipped that excess fabric out that was on the curve, and now as I open it up, it's going to have a really nice smooth, it's going to lay really nicely on that curve. The next thing that I do is take this part of my mask and this part of the mask and put them together. So I'm going to take right sides of the fabric and place them together, and then I'm going to sew along the top here to form the top edge of my mask. So right sides together, and get everything lined up, and I am going to backstitch again, and I'm using 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. So if you want to look on a ruler, you can see how much that is. Normally on a sewing machine, 1/4 of an inch is about the same width as your presser foot. So the foot of your machine that you're using is about 1/4 of an inch, so it helps you be able to gauge how deep a seam you're taking. I don't know if the camera's picking up very well what I'm doing here. I don't know if you can see as I'm sewing, but I'll show you once again. I backstitched and I'm getting rid of the excess thread. So I trim the thread there, and I'm going to trim my thread over here. And this is what it looks like now. I've gone across, sewn across the top of this. And I'm also going to make some little clips in this so it will come around these curves nicely. So I'm clipping this. Take the excess fabric out so it lays really nicely. And I just trim some of the excess off of my seams. And I'm going to also, at the bottom of the mask here, now I've got the top, you can see where this piece is to form on my neck, nose. On the bottom of the mask, I'm also going to stitch across here. So that's the next thing that I do. I am got right sides together, and I'm going to stitch across the bottom of my mask. I'm sorry this machine is kind of old and rattly, but I love it. Once again, I backstitch. This is pretty much a straight seam, so it's pretty easy to do. I'm not too worried about my seam allowances and making sure that they're open. I actually just have my seam allowances together. And I'll show you what I mean when I'm finished here. Again, I am going to cut off any excess threads that I've got. And these seam allowances that I did together, right here, I didn't worry that they were spread apart. Sometimes we spread these apart and you can press them, but I didn't worry about that too much this time. I just let them go off to one side. Now what I'm going to do is